Monopolies. No, not this. A truly American business model, situation, and economic juggernaut that has been a part of our not only our modern economy, but our past as well. So today we're going to discuss two monopolies that have not only affected our past, but really have affected our law books as well. American Tobacco and Standard Oil. Now, before we get into the content, there's something that you gotta understand. You see, things were a very different time back then. You had all types of different things going on. So let's get right down to it. Yeah.
So, in my past 3 years of work in sales and my past several years of studying business, not only in college but in my personal time, I've really got an understanding that monopolies and understanding them are really important. Believe it or not, monopolies affect all of us. Even today, I mean, even as late as 2020, you still have companies like Google and or maybe even Amazon being considered monopolies. So, monopolies and how are they disbanded or how are they created? Well, let's get a background about the law that prevents them first. So we start off with the Sherman Antitrust Act. Overall, this is fundamentally one of the most important regulatory economic laws that we have passed in the past 200 years. I mean, this stops companies from becoming huge conglomerates. This stops companies from doing anti-competitive business practices. This really stops businesses from doing things that they shouldn't. So, first and foremost, we have Standard Oil. Now, Standard Oil is a historically famous company, especially in our industry, the business world. You know, that's why we're in college. And this is literally a textbook example of a monopoly doing things it shouldn't have been doing, being anti-competitive, not allowing companies to do what they need to do, not allowing competition and other things to start. So really, Standard Oil is just a great example, and it's something that has affected all of us. I mean, if you are going to go get gas at a gas station, more than likely you're getting gas from a company that used to be Standard Oil. Next, we have American Tobacco. They started up a little bit differently from Standard Oil. They were a family business started by a father and a couple of sons that ended up really starting in the manufacturing of the cigarette industry, and then they went on to become financially successful enough to where they were able to merge with a bunch of other companies and then found success that way. So, sales and marketing of Standard Oil. Eventually, Standard Oil became so powerful that it hit about a 90% market share in the oil refinery industry. So basically, what that means is that they weren't producing 90% of oil. They were essentially refining it and making the process better. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. If you look at the graph, you can basically see that throughout the 1880s all the way into the 1910s, their asset portfolio was literally skyrocketing. What was happening was they would vertically integrate and optimize their business, which essentially means they make money, they reinvest it. They make money, they buy someone. They make money, they do something that benefits the company and build its portfolio up even stronger. You can also see that they weren't earning a lot of profit. I mean, if you look from the beginning to the end of the graph, it basically mirrors and trails it. And they weren't even producing a lot of dividends and paying out a lot of money. So they were reinvesting it and having that approach. Now, basically, Standard Oil's approach was, listen, what we're going to do is we're going to lower the cost for everybody. We're going to lower the cost for consumers of gas. We're going to lower the cost of business consumers and the railroad industry. And what we're going to do is we're going to drive down prices to a point where we're going to be the only ones in the game that can afford that plane. And that's what they did. What they would do is they would lower the cost either by increasing their stock count or something to do with their stocks and dividends. And what that would do is it would allow them to drive their price down to a point where their competition could not keep up with the pricing. On this picture, you can see that you can really see what happened to Standard Oil after it ended up being dissolved in the 1911 in the Standard Trust Act. If you look closely, you can see that a lot of these companies are still here today, and a lot of them are used by us normal consumers of gasoline for our cars. Now, American Tobacco, they also were able to peak at about a 90% cigarette production rate in the early 1980s or 1990s. And they essentially had a very similar sales and business strategy. They would become financially successful, reinvest, financially successful, buy a company out, financially successful, do something that benefited the business long term. Now, their marketing strategy was absolutely genius. What they did is they tied cigarettes, like they still do in today's industry, they tied cigarettes to something popular, to something cool, to something hip. And what they did was they bundled it together in baseball card packs. And if any of you guys have ever played Red Dead Redemption 2, you know this because you have to collect a buttload of cigarette packs so you can get these cigarette cards. Essentially what they did to benefit people, business-wise, is that they reduced the cost of manufacturing cigarettes to a point, again, just like Standard Oil, where they were able to drive people out, buy them, drive people out, make money from consumers, and they really grew their business. I mean, they went from $25 million to $316 million. In equity. That's insane. That is an insane amount of growth long term. Now, let's talk about legacy. Now, overall, Standard Oil, you can say that it helped shape the economy, their industry. It lowered costs for everybody, definitely shaped history. But you can also ask at what cost? I mean, what was sacrificed in order to do that? When you have humans like John Rockefeller that became the richest person ever, you have situations that can lead to people destroying the economy. And that's exactly what happened in the Great Depression. I mean, besides the banks failing and all this other stuff, you had a lot of money in a lot of wealthy families all at one time. And it wasn't dispersed and stimulating the economy enough. And that's what happened during the Great Depression. So just always think that at what cost. Now, American Tobacco, very similar to Standard Oil again. It shaped the cigarette industry. And just overall had a legacy of helping but also harming the economy and the industry. Now, they built a lot of infrastructure, and currently today, one of their old manufacturing centers was reused for other businesses to, cohabit and work in, and you can see that in the picture. So, in conclusion, both companies were deemed a monopoly, both companies were dissolved, and both companies went directly to jail. They didn't pass go. They did not collect $200. They went straight to jail. They did not roll no doubles straight after either. Here are my sources. Now, do we have any questions? Let me know. Type in the chat. Send me an email. Whatever is the best way to communicate any questions or anything you have.
Yeah.